Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to talk about hero points and also the fortune and misfortune traits as a whole, as they're actually pretty interesting. So, hero points. Hero points are a meta currency, which is a currency that each player has but the actual characters don't know about, that every single player can use to affect the outcome of each session very slightly. Every single player starts each session with a single hero point, and whenever they do something particular special or heroic, the GM can decide to award a hero with an additional hero point. Generally speaking, you're not supposed to have more than 3 hero points at a time, and it's also recommended for GMs to give out about maybe 1 hero point per hour. That's not 1 hero point per PC an hour, just 1 hero point. But what can you actually do with these once you have them? There are 2 main uses for hero points: rerolling dice and stopping death. Let's talk about the death one first though, as it is a bit less complex. Whenever you would gain the dying condition or your dying value would increase, you can use all of the hero points in your possession to instead stabilize, losing the dying condition completely and also not increasing your wounded condition. If you're looking to play it pretty safe and avoid death entirely, this is a great option, and not getting the wounded condition is so good for maintaining that, or ensuring that you don't get caught in the cycle of, stabilizing, then taking damage, then stabilizing, taking damage, and dying very, very quickly. This is honestly one of the best ways to ensure that you don't die, but it does cost all of your hero points. If you want to try and, prevent dying in the first place though, or if you just want to go like a hero, you can always spend a single hero point to reroll a single d20 roll. You make the decision on if you want to actually spend your hero point once you see the result of your roll, but before the GM actually tells you whether or not you pass. Now, there is a little bit of leeway here, because if you've been fighting the same creature a lot, then you're probably going to know what kind of number you have to roll in your d20 to hit them. So if you roll a 10, and you know that is not going to cut it, yeah, the GM hasn't told you whether or not it's a success, but so it's a little bit finicky, but generally speaking, unless the GM says you hit, or you've already rolled damage, you can pretty much always just say, I want to spend a hero point and I'd like to reroll. You have to take the second result though, even if it's lower. Though I do know that some people like to house roll it so that a hero point can't actively make things worse. Basically, if you roll something and it's a failure, and then you decide to use a hero point and roll a 1, some people say, yeah, it'll just still be a failure rather than turning it into a critical failure. I do really get that, even though I have not played in the game using that kind of homebrew, as using a hero point and then trying to do something super cool only to turn it into a failure does feel pretty bad, because hero points are a limited resource, and using that limited resource to make things worse kinda sucks. The important part of this rule, at least for this video though, is that spending a hero point like this adds the fortune trait to your roll. So let's talk about fortune and misfortune, why don't we? The fortune and misfortune traits are generally pretty simple, and they actually don't have all that many rules directly attached to them, but they are incredibly powerful whenever they show up. Both affect how you roll your dice, with fortune making you roll your dice better, and misfortune making your die rolls worse. The interesting part is that only one source of each trait can apply to each roll, meaning that if you are affected by 2 different fortune effects, you have to choose which one you want to use. This means that you can't actually use a hero point to re-roll something like devise a stratagem, as that action already has the fortune trait, meaning that you can't use a hero point to re-roll, as that also has the fortune trait. Also, that means that you cannot use 2 hero points to roll a d20 3 times, as, you can only have one source of the fortune trait. This does work a tad bit different for misfortune though, as with fortune you choose which effect you want to have active, but for misfortune, the GM decides, and they're going to pick the worst one, as the strongest source of misfortune is going to overpower the rest. The most interesting parts about these 2 traits though is easily how they interact. As you might expect, whenever you mix bad luck with good luck, you get a neutral luck, and any misfortune trait counteracts any fortune trait it comes across, and vice versa. This means that if your character is, I don't know, say cursed with bad luck, then you can use a hero point to counteract whichever curse that you're afflicted with, but you don't actually get the reroll of the hero point. It's a little bit of a weird system that it ends up being a bit ambiguous, unfortunately, but it can set up for some really interesting situations. Any fortune effect and any misfortune effect can counteract their opposite, no matter how minor whatever source of that is. Having an easy source of fortune or misfortune can be great in campaigns where you end up fighting a lot of enemies that can apply those sorts of effects. It is a kind of interesting situation where having one of them available can help you out in the situations where it shows up, and honestly, I kind of like that. Overall, I really like how both hero points and the Fortune Misfortune traits are handled in 2e. Reroll effects are incredibly powerful to say the least, and they really need to be handled with discretion, or else they can easily become far too strong. Any ability to roll twice and take the higher is about a +3 to your average result, but in reality, just saying it's a +3 or +4 to your d20 rolls vastly undersells how good this is. If you need to roll a 1 to critically fail, and you're rolling twice and taking the higher, then your odds of critically failing are 1 in 400 rather than 1 in 20. That is a huge, huge difference. Rolling twice and taking the better, or rolling twice and taking the worst, vastly changes the odds of success. As for hero points, I do like them even though I'm generally not actually that big of a fan of meta currencies. A hero point is never going to make any fight trivial, and they can really spice things up whenever your rolls are just not agreeing with whatever you want your character to be doing. Honestly, I recommend GMs to focus on giving out hero points for good RP, or just for moments where someone makes the whole party laugh, as, you know, we're playing a game, and encouraging that sort of behavior is generally going to be pretty good, and people are going to start seeking out those moments more to try and get more hero points. If you have a player in your party that wants to RP but is kind of anxious about it and isn't really seeking it out because they're nervous, giving out hero points for RP can help bring them a bit out of their shell, because nothing gets people to do something like an incentive. Thanks for watching. I find Misfortune and Fortune pretty interesting, and I've been actually looking to talk about them for a little while now. It was really important for Paizo to make that they are both rare and impactful, and they managed to pull it off pretty well. What are your thoughts on hero points, though? I know that in most of the games that I've played in, the entire group kind of tends to forget to try and get hero points mid-session, and the GMs just forget to give them out. But what about you? Regardless, live a wonderful life.